Today I'll be sharing my experience and reviewing my time with the ROG Phone 5 and 5S Pro. Hopefully this can help you be more informed when making your decision if you are thinking about buying one for yourself. Let me start with the camera. There is a bit of a story behind the camera for my phone. So I had the original ROG Phone 5 model. The phone always seemed to have a bit of a fuzzy camera, despite other reviews I read saying it was pretty decent. Eventually the phone wouldn't even open the camera app, and so it turned out the phone itself was faulty. Onto my current phone, which is the 5S Pro. It has overall good camera quality. Generally, when there's good lighting, you won't have any issues, and it has a pretty clear picture. The two complaints I do have about the camera is the night mode. It barely picks up anything, and the front camera is absolutely terrible when it comes to color. It will take two different photos, one after the next, and they will have completely different colors to them. I'd also like to compare the fingerprint sensors between the two models. The old model, the 5, seemed to have a very good and very responsive fingerprint sensor, and it had a wide range of space for you to press it on the screen. The new model seems to not be as quick and efficient at picking up your fingerprint, and I actually had quite a bit of trouble with it when I first got the phone and was almost wondering if it would end up being faulty or not, but it seems to have settled in since. Comparing the screen upgrades from the original 5 to the 5S model, I haven't been able to tell any noticeable differences in daily use. The screen response seems the same. They're both very quick, very responsive phones. One issue I have had is that since I've gotten the new phone, the edges of the screen seem to be overly sensitive. Now, there may be a setting for that somewhere, but I've yet to find it. And it's really annoying when you're just holding the phone and trying to scroll, but it won't scroll because it thinks you're touching the edge of the screen as well. One issue I have had with the screen on both phones is that whenever you swap it into 144Hz, the screen dims. And whilst watching videos on anything that isn't 60Hz, the phone screen flickers, which is quite annoying. The phone itself is a bit heavy for everyday use, but that's to be expected with all the amazing things they've packed into it. Moving on to games, pretty much every game I've played seems to be fully playable at its full FPS, whatever that is, whether it's 60 or 144Hz. The only exception to this rule I've found would be Genshin Impact, which runs at 60 FPS most of the time, but does need a cooler, and not the ROG cooler, because that doesn't cut it. The ROG cooler is a fan, that's it. It just blows room temperature air. You need a active cooler. I use the Cooler 2 Pro, and it cools the phone just fine and enables you to play Genshin without burning your fingers off. The Asus ROG Phone cooler can be very useful if you need the extra 2 buttons. However, most of the time I find myself not bothering with it due to the proprietary connection that it comes with. The pins are very fiddly and it's very difficult to get on and off the phone, and you feel like you're gonna break something and you worry about scratching the phone every time you do put it on. Back to the Black Shark Cooler 2 Pro. It's an active cooler, which means that it actively cools, and you'll see temperatures down to even 0 degrees on the cooler itself, but on the phone it stays at around 28 to 36 degrees most of the time. For reference, without the cooler, you will see 55-degree temperatures upwards, and the phone will thermal throttle, bringing its performance down to unplayable laggy levels. With the cooler, however, with the exception of giant cities like Liyue in Genshin, which you will see that it dips down to about 40 FPS in, the game is 100% playable still, but for areas outside of major cities, it stays at around 60 FPS pretty much all the time. In terms of Xmode and Xmode Plus, I found them to be both useless because anything that would actually benefit from the extra performance that the phone unlocks is thermal throttled without an active cooler anyway. So before you even get to use the extra performance, your phone is throttled at a lower performance rate. In terms of CPU performance, I found that the 5S was a bit better, assuming the active cooler was plugged in, whereas the normal ROG Phone 5 did benefit from having Xmode on with active cooling. In regards to the touch buttons on the phone itself, they're absolutely fantastic. Using the shoulder buttons, you can split them into 2 buttons each for a total of 4 buttons, which enables you to play most games comfortably. If you do need the extra buttons, as I mentioned earlier, you can plug the cooler in, and if you get the Pro version of the phone, it actually comes with 2 swipe buttons at the back, though they can be a bit fiddly to activate sometimes in the heat of the moment. More often than not, they do the job. Moving on, the RGB lights on the back of the normal ROG Phone 5 have a decent range of colors and patterns that you can program in. I was pretty happy with it. However, I found myself having them off more often than not because they seemed to take up an average of 10% battery per day, which is, I don't know, a bit of a joke for RGB lights. The 5S Pro comes with a screen on the back instead of the RGB lights. On the screen, you can only set pictures or text. It's very limited in what you can do with it. You can't even set GIFs. The screen itself is rather bland and low quality in my opinion. It's hard to see the images, especially when compared to other dual screen phones such as the Flip 3. The 5S Pro only allows you to have 3 animations and another 3 which are basically just ROG Asus advertisements. So most of the animation, you won't see whatever you've put on the screen. So if you were thinking you could show off your favorite waifu on the back, you'll probably be disappointed. Moving on to the speakers of the phone, I saw many reviews online saying how amazing they were and praising the speakers, which I was extremely skeptical about. However, actually owning the phone, I was very pleasantly surprised when I heard the phone in person, and I can confirm the speakers are nice enough that I actually use them. They even have a little bit of bass. One thing I do love is that both of the speakers are facing the front, not one on the side and one on the front, which I've always hated with other phones. The range of the speakers is pretty good, and most of the time it makes other phones sound flat in comparison. Here are a few quick notes I took down that I didn't think warranted full talking points, but if you're going to daily drive the phone, you'll probably want to know about them. Let's start with the charge bypass feature. It's one of the best features on the phone. However, it only works when a game is running and the screen is on. The battery care system is fantastic. The battery charge time is amazing. It takes as little as 15 minutes to charge to about 80%, and the battery lasts so long that I only charge it once every 2 days, or if I'm really using the phone, every day and a half roughly. The phone doesn't have a default music player, which blew my mind. Like, what phone doesn't have that these days? So that was really annoying. I did end up finding a Sony music player which does the job, and it's not littered with ads and all the rest of it. As for the video editor and the photo editor, they're absolutely garbage compared to the Samsung S10 Plus I came from. They miss a lot of basic features that the S10 Plus had, and these are features that I would use regularly on a daily basis almost. Transferring all my stuff to the new phone didn't work for me as intended, so I had to do everything manually, which took like 2 days and was a giant pain in the ass. The charging and notification LED won't seem to remember its settings on the new phone, so every time I plug my phone into charge, my eyes get blasted by a bright orange light, so that's nice. In regards to the phone's general snappiness and usability, the phone is super quick and snappy, so much so that when I went back to my old phone for the brief period while my phone was getting replaced, I actually had to stop and slow myself down and wait a couple of seconds for the phone to catch up because it just could not register as quick as my ROG phone. I have had an issue where the first ROG Phone 5 would regularly, about every half a day, close all of my applications and delete any data I had open, which was super frustrating. However, they seem to have fixed it on the 5S model. I do still have my web browser closed once every now and then. However, it's much less frequent, and it sounds like that might actually be a problem with the browser itself. Though I didn't ever have this problem with the same browser on the Samsung S10 Plus. One of the fantastic features that the ROG Phone 5 has is its ability to dual connect to 2 Wi-Fi connections at once. One I have set as 5G and the other one as 2G. That way I have nice quick reception when I'm close to the modem, and even when I am outside, out the front of the house, I still get decent reception. In regards to the phone's 5G functions, we don't even have any 5G towers where I live, so it's absolutely useless to me. At least it was. I noticed as soon as you get your vaccine that the 5G reception becomes really strong, And if you get your booster, it actually speeds up as well. And if you're having a really hard day and you're just a bit tired, there is an option to turn the 5G separately off so you can just use your regular 4G network if it's draining you too much. I mentioned before, but I'll touch on it again. The 120Hz and the 144Hz are absolutely amazing when you're scrolling through web browsing or other content on your phone. The smoothness is unreal and the difference from 60Hz is night and day. The phone's minimum and maximum brightness is really good. I've not had any problems with it at night or in the daytime out in the sun. It would be nice to have 2 or 4K screens in the future, but it's not really essential. Sometimes it can seem like things are fuzzy or bland color-wise on the phone's current screen, but I believe that has something to do with the always-on HDR technology they have implemented more than the resolution or the quality of the screen itself. If you're trying to use the auto refresh rate, don't. It's junk. There's been a lot of hype about the CPU of this phone. However, the reality is most games are GPU limited, so realistically they should be upgrading that next. The CPU performs absolutely fine in basically everything I've played. Having the camera above the screen and not being a notch in the screen is absolutely amazing, and I love that design choice. Also, having a headphone jack and 2 USB-C ports is fantastic, especially when you want to do multiple things at once, like charge the phone while you're playing a game and have it connected to a monitor. The fact that the phone isn't waterproof sucks. Even just a low degree of waterproofing would have been nice for basic things like when you go out in the rain. It does come with some rubber pads that you can stick in the charging ports, but they're a pain to get in and out, and more often than not, you just couldn't be bothered. It's not worth your time. One of the selling points that Asus likes to use is that their phones have up to 18 GB of RAM, which is the most in any phone to date. In all honesty, anything above 12 GB of RAM on a phone right now is pretty useless. You literally won't use it. I feel like that money could have been better spent elsewhere on the phone, like maybe having a default music player, I don't know. In terms of the models on offer, if you're not sure which one to get, I would get the cheapest model. It's honestly not worth the extra price unless you need the storage. The RAM you will honestly never use, and the extra 2 buttons are not worth paying the ridiculous price jump for. That said, you might not have a choice. I didn't. They only offered the most expensive model of the phone originally in Australia. However, they didn't even offer the Pro model or the Ultimate model, so you got the worst phone for the worst value. Thankfully, when they released the 5S, they actually offered the Pro model, which is what I ended up with. I know that availability in other countries is also pretty bad, and some countries it's not even available at all. Make sure you get the global version of the phone, which doesn't have things locked down in software like the Chinese version. You can tell them apart at a glance from the back of the phone for the most part. The CN version of the phone will have Tencent written on the back glass panel, whereas the global version will not. You should always try and buy from an official retailer, that way you know you're getting the actual global version that you paid for. If you try and buy off places like Kogan, all of them will say it's the global version, and then they'll just ship you the Chinese version anyway. The phone doesn't have wireless charging, which kinda sucks, because it's a feature I really enjoyed, but it charges so quick that it's kind of a non-issue really. The auto brightness on this phone for the screen is absolute junk. It's been improved on the 5S as far as I can tell. It was completely unusable before on the original Asus ROG Phone 5, however they have improved it since. I do have it on at the moment, but it still likes to blind you in the middle of the night sometimes, and turn down to minimum randomly during the day. A little side note about the speakers is I found that Pocket Link gets in them very easily, and it's very hard to get out. In fact, I had a piece I couldn't get out on my original phone, but thankfully that's been swapped. There's one final topic I'd like to cover about the phone before I end the video. I watched countless reviews and videos while I was deciding if I should buy the phone or not. There was one thing that seems to have been blown out of proportion really bad. The strength of the phone is absolutely fine for daily use. You will not snap your phone in half. It's absolutely fine. I have sat on my phone by mistake. I've dropped it on the driveway multiple times, which is concrete by the way. I even tried bending it myself just to see if it actually would just snap, and no, it's absolutely fine. So unless you are actively trying to break your brand new phone and you're literally shaking as you use your full strength, like the certain video that went viral, you will not break your phone and it is absolutely fine. So I guess the moral of this story is don't actively try to break your new expensive phone on purpose. Duh. With all that said, that wraps up my review and experience of owning and living with the ROG Phone 5 and 5S Pro for the last 6 months. I hope this video was informative and can help you decide if you're in the market looking to buy the ROG phone.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.